A lot of these games are hard to watch. Today, fortunately, wasn't. A lot of people wrote Nebraska off coming into it, and I don't want to say I did, but I didn't make a preview video for it this week. You go back and look at one of the people from chat yesterday saying, Connor, where was the preview for Minnesota? And my response was, what was the point? We knew kind of what the outcome was going to be. Fortunately, they kept it tighter and more entertaining than some of the other games that we knew we were going to be in for a long day on, but it still ended up the same way. What's frustrating is the way it happened, right? If you get beat down the entire game and it's just a slow bleed, you can anticipate the loss at the end. But when you're given the hope at the beginning, it hurts more. And I don't want to say that that hope was false hope, because I do strongly believe that with maybe a little bit better adjustment for the offense, at least, in the second half, Nebraska goes on to win that game. And what's interesting is there was a point at halftime where my friends and I were texting, and they're like, hey, Nebraska's going to find a way to blow this one. We've already seen the offense slow down. The defense isn't going to be able to maintain this level of energy the entire way. Because one thing I tweeted, by the way, guys, I'm on Twitter. I tried to tweet during the game because you guys asked me to, so I gave you a few. But anyway, I tweeted during the game that the defense wasn't going to be able to win and continue to hold on strong if the offense couldn't convert on some third downs and they couldn't get first downs. I think it was like six 3-and-outs without a first down in a row. And eventually the defense gets worn out in that situation. And that's exactly what happened. Anyway, getting back on track, if we would have had any competent adjustments going into the offense, or to help the offense going into the third quarter, Nebraska probably wins that game. It's interesting. When we played against Indiana, there were first half adjustments. When we played against Rutgers, there were amazing first half adjustments. What can we say here? What was the positive on offense outside of Logan Smothers getting to play more in the fourth quarter at the very end when it was over? The adjustment that felt like was inevitable was Chubba Purdy was going to get benched, because after multiple repeat failures, he couldn't throw the ball downfield. He couldn't move the ball along and sustain a drive. So after all of those failures, everybody told me, at least through my phone, right? Everyone was messaging me, it's time for Smothers. Whipple and Mickey recognize it, and we're going to see him play. And it didn't happen. And I'm not saying that the game would have been any different with Smothers in there, but it felt like he gave us a chance at the end. Neither of those guys are elite passers. They've got time. They've got to get things worked on. They're young, whatever. Why did we stick to the same thing that didn't work? Why didn't Mark Whipple make a change? Why didn't he have a plan, right? There were a couple plays at the end when Smothers had some wide open room and he should have run. One specifically was on the third down, I believe it was. He ended up firing the ball out of bounds, where he would have easily picked up 5 yards, if not 10, in a first down to maintain that drive. Why didn't he run it? That was interesting to me. I'm not sure if he's told not to. I don't know. Point is, it just felt like the adjustments weren't there. It felt like the offense held us back in this game. Well, it didn't feel like the offense did hold us back in this game, unfortunately. And with Casey Thompson, this would have been another game that was entirely winnable. And I think this would have been the one where Nebraska finally did win. Not that that matters. Ugh, man, it's just sick because we were so close. I want to get to chat. I'm just trying to vent out some of my early frustrations because, yeah, you guys feel the same. You guys know what it is. It's another frustrating loss by one score. A lot of people said Nebraska was going to lose this game by 14 plus. I don't know who the hell said that. I told you this was going to be a lot tighter than you thought, because even when Nebraska was on their knees and done, I mean, it was over at halftime. When they came out and they couldn't score, we all knew it was done. All Minnesota had to do was switch up their quarterbacks and go from the game manager — I told you that guy was a game manager, he wasn't any good — to the guy who could actually move the ball downfield and made some pretty good decisions. No turnovers, no issues. I can't even remember his name. Kalinat, whatever. That guy came in and he just worked Nebraska's D over and over and over, and they had long drives, and Mo Ibrahim did his thing. The game never got out of hand, and we knew it wouldn't get out of hand, because how's it going to get out of hand? They don't want to score. They just want to bleed clock. That's the Minnesota game plan. They don't win blowouts. They win tight games, and they just win because they wear you down. So anyway, I'm going to get to chat, but Anthony Grant had over 100 yards rushing, and we still lost. So for all the people who talk about we need to hand the ball to Anthony Grant more, he had over 20 carries. What else can you ask for? You have to be able to establish the pass. You have to be able to complete passes. One more note before I get to chat. He had a great throw to Marcus Washington down the left sideline where Marcus toe tapped to stay in. I think it was a 4th and 11 or something. Anyway, he converted on 4th down. It was awesome. Couldn't believe he did it. We needed more of that. We needed more catches, and we needed a quarterback who could find guys downfield, find them over the middle. There were a lot of drop balls. There were a lot of missed throws. It's not the same without your number one guy. And because Nebraska's in this situation where they've got new coaches, new guys from the transfer portal, you're not going to see perfect from your backups. That's just the reality of the situation. So a lot of people say, well, Mark Whipple isn't a good offensive coordinator. Maybe he's okay. Maybe he's just okay. But even in that event, he's working with an entirely new receiving core, a new quarterback, 2 new quarterbacks from the transfer portal, and trying to get them all on the same page. And it's just not easy to do. So I understand from his point of view, but I don't understand why he didn't give Logan some more chances earlier. I'm going to get to chat. Hey, Evan, what's happening? Thank you for the $10 super chat. Man, what happened to be in a second half team? That was rough to watch till the very end when it got a little exciting. Do you think we should roll with Logan till Casey is back or no? Either way, GBR. So my thoughts here, Logan should get more opportunity. I don't know if it's that he's more experienced that makes him less jumpy, but Chubba just has this thing about him that's twitchy and quick, and he's not all there. He's not focused and kind of level-headed. I don't know if he's nervous. Maybe that's the key word, right? He could be nervous. It could be too big for him right now. He might not be prepared enough, and because he's not prepared enough, he's not making the right reads. He's not making the right decisions. I don't know. Probably time to go with Logan Smothers until Casey's back. I would say he gives us a better chance because he seemed more collected, even though he's not really a great arm talent either. And what's interesting is they both look to be equally fast. Chubba had some runs, and he made some good decisions to tuck it early on. It's just we couldn't maintain that because they put a spy on the quarterback, and then Chubba had no option. They would bring the pressure, and he would be done, wouldn't be able to find a lane. So I'm not sure if it's better to play either one of them. At this point, it's to me a lost cause until we have Casey back. Just going to be honest with you. There's no way. I mean, every week any team can win, right? Any Saturday any team can win. But I can promise you, Nebraska cannot beat Michigan with these 2 quarterbacks. They just can't. Whether it's their fault or not, it's just situation's not looking to be too bright for either of them against a top 5 team. Casey Thompson could miraculously find a way to beat Michigan. It's 1 in 100 times, right? But there's still that tiny, tiny chance. So even in these last 2 games, Iowa today dismantled Purdue. I think they won 24-3. Purdue's not any good. We've already talked about it in a bunch of videos, and people think that I'm a hater for saying these things. The Big Ten West does not have any good football teams. Wisconsin's okay. Wisconsin, I think, is going to end up winning the Big Ten, or the Big Ten West, sorry. Honestly, they will, because they're going to beat Nebraska. They're probably going to win out, and they have a really strong defense, even when they've got all their issues and all of the things overhanging with this old coach. Point is this: none of these teams are very good. Minnesota's not very good. Iowa's not very good. Purdue's not very good. Illinois is not very good. All of them are beatable if you have a competent quarterback and a competent team to go out there and do it. Nebraska doesn't have that right now. It is what it is. Always Aviation says we should have never been in the situation to have to drive down and tie it with 2 minutes left in the first place. Yeah, we were up 10 points going into half. And with halftime adjustments, we should have been able to figure out a way to at least kick a field goal. At least get into field goal range once or twice. What was that? 6 times. Let me pull it up. Play-by-play. Here it is. 1, 2, 3. So, wait, no, that's here it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. So was it 4 consecutive drives? Nebraska couldn't do anything. They couldn't kick a field goal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7. It was 7 consecutive drives. It was just 4 after the half. It's inexcusable. What's the excuse there? I mean, Mark Whipple. We need something on offense. It's just. And Palmer dropped like 3 passes, yeah. That sucked. He got hit, though, over the middle. What was interesting about their defense is they didn't play man-to-man. So if you guys noticed, we talked about this in another stream earlier this week. When you're playing man-to-man, you're going to be in a lot of contested situations, right? The corner or the safety is going to be draped on you. And when you go for the ball, it's going to be kind of a toss-up on who comes down with it. When we're in these zone situations, these safeties, these linebackers, and these DBs are coming in strong, and they're going to hit you right as you catch the ball because there's separation, right? So they can see the ball's thrown. Now they have, whatever it is, 3 seconds to close in on you. And we saw Trey take a couple big hits because they had that time to make the read and then zone in and lock him down. And he wasn't able to hold on, which made sense because those hits come in super hard. He's still got to catch them. It's his job, right, to hold on to the ball, and it is what it is. He couldn't do it. Yeah, there were some drops today that were punishing. Ramir Johnson got to play. We had talked about him getting to play this week or hoping he'd get to play. Was it anything special? I mean, he didn't have many big runs. He had 4 for 3 yards, so less than a yard a carry. He wasn't in any good positions. It mostly felt like they were draws, and the defense had already known it was going to be a run play. Anthony Grant was the highlight as a running back. He makes things happen. He's able to create something out of nothing. When it looks like he's going to be tackled behind the line of scrimmage, he squeezes his way out. He gets to the sideline. He's quick enough, fast enough, and strong enough to make a play. So that was a bright spot. He ran for over 100 yards. What more can you ask for? A lot of people were saying Whipple just needs to keep giving him the ball. I think he only had 9 carries in the second half. But we were chasing the entire time. It felt like we were chasing. Nebraska was not chasing. They were up 10 points. Then they were up 7 points. Then they were tied. Then they were down 3. Then they were down 10. It never felt like they were chasing. It never felt like they were chasing because they weren't chasing in the first half. But in the second half, being up 10, it still felt like it because we knew what was coming. They knew what was coming. The defense knew what was coming. And even though the defense wanted to keep playing to the high level they had played at, when you don't get rest, the time of possession difference, let me check it out right here. Minnesota had the ball for an additional 10 minutes over Nebraska. That 10 minutes is 10 more minutes that Minnesota's D got to rest versus our defense got to rest, right? And eventually, over the course of the game, it just wears you down. Not sustainable. You can't keep playing at a high level on defense when your big guys are worn out and you have to keep rotating. Nebraska already doesn't have the defensive line where they can rotate and afford to where they can afford to rotate and hold Mo Ibrahim for 2 yards a carry or whatever it is, right? Their defensive linemen are just not very big. Devin Drew's a smaller guy. Nash Hutmacher's pretty big. Feast is decently big, but Drew and Stephon Wynn are undersized for Big Ten. All of them are, and they can't hold a running back like Mo Ibrahim, especially when they're getting tired. It's just not realistic. So it is what it is. Another no bowl season. Yeah, there's always hope, right? Or you want to say there's hope, but this is done. There's no bowl coming because they're not going to beat Michigan. Even with Casey Thompson, it's not going to happen. I do think there's a good chance Casey comes back next week, though. The positive thing is if Casey does play, it'll make the games entertaining. And for us, that's all we want at this point. We want them to be entertaining. And if you're like me, you want to bet on Nebraska so you can at least win money like you did today. But it's going to be really tough to beat Michigan. It's going to be really tough it's going to be tough to beat Wisconsin at home and Iowa on the road. Nothing's guaranteed. Odds are right now, this is a 3-win team. Same as last year. Crazy to think about, huh? But at least they'll be competitive if Casey comes back. That's the one bright side. The offensive line in the first half was pretty solid. So they had got a push. They won the line of scrimmage almost every time they were out there for the first quarter. First quarter was dominant. I wrote down the stats in the first quarter. Let me pull those up. I don't even know where they are. It's too hard to find on the fly with you guys. But the point is, first quarter, we had dominated in the running game. I think we had 100 yards rushing to their -10 or something ridiculous. They were not moving the ball, period. We were winning at the line of scrimmage on both sides. That's Big Ten football. That's how you win. If you wanted to go to a coach and say, hey, this is what we're looking for in the next Nebraska head coach, you would show them the first quarter of this game. and you'd say we need to dominate the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. We need to be able to stop the run because that's what teams in this division or this conference like to do primarily. And we need to be able to run the ball. That's it. That's how you win games in the Big Ten. If we could have sustained that model the entire way through, we would have won the game. The offensive line slowly broke down, slowly got weaker, but they weren't terrible. The wide receiver perimeter blocking, at least in the first half, was really good. They allowed Anthony Grant to get outside a couple times. And you don't realize how good the perimeter blocking is until we start to make bigger runs downfield, right? Because there are times when the receivers will have good blocking, but when the running back's only going for 5 yards up the middle and getting tackled, you don't see the receivers. It shows when the guy breaks one for 15 yards. Anthony Grant's long run of today was 36 yards. And it showed when the wide receivers were out there doing their job. Ah, man, there were so many good things about that first quarter. And there was never a point where I was like, oh, we're for sure going to win this game. I will say I did go and sprinkle the money line in the first quarter when we were up 7-0. But it never felt like we were going to be able to maintain that level of success the entire way through. I mean, just go read Twitter. People are always telling you how it's gonna happen, and it's true. It sucks. Galactus says, all that said, 3-win team likely. How does Trev justify giving Mickey Joseph the job? I don't. Does anyone think Mickey Joseph's getting the job? Raise your hand. Tell me in the chat, is Mickey Joseph getting the job? This isn't a knock on Mickey Joseph, okay? I'm not saying that he's not the right guy or that he doesn't possess some of the good qualities in Nebraska's next head coach and that he wouldn't be successful here. What I'm saying is, and what we've said for the last month, he doesn't have the resume that some of these other coaches out there do. He needed to get something positive from this season on his resume to give him the chance to get hired. The positive would have been a win over a Big Ten team who's competent. Rutgers is not competent. They got blown out by this same Minnesota team last week, 31-0. Indiana is not competent. They're going to win 3 total games this entire season. So those 2 don't count. You would have had to win Minnesota or Wisconsin. I mean, it feels like the job is going to be given out by Wisconsin or at least getting near finalized by that Wisconsin week. Mickey Joseph had to win this week or it was done. I don't think Mickey Joseph has any chance. Eagle says, I don't think he'll get the job, but I hope he stays here. Tater says, I don't think he is, but I do still think he could be the right guy for the job. Caleb says, I don't think so. I mean, chat's on the program that I'm on. He needed to get something positive on the resume, and he didn't get it today, and this was the last hope. This was it. So, Mickey Joseph, fantastic job as an interim, getting guys hyped up, getting them to compete. I mean, what motivation do they have at this point? They got no quarterback. The fans are, feeling some type of way, and they're frustrated. I'm online making videos about who the next head coach is going to be, not even talking about the game for this week. All right, let's just talk about what is really going on around Husker football, right? Players are still motivated to play, and they still came out to fight today. Credit to Mickey Joseph. He's done an awesome job. He's trying to find ways to win. But he's picking up the pieces of a team that's in shambles. It's not his fault. If he's here next year and if he's here for, the next 3 or 4 years, I think he's got a very bright future and he's going to have some great players, some great production from them, and he's going to get to feel what it's like to win in Nebraska. But I don't think he's going to be the guy who's leading the charge. Mr. Boss says a new head coach likely means a new strength staff, so that is a major plus. Today, it never felt like Nebraska was getting dominated when we talk about strength, maybe conditioning. But they held their own on defense the entire way through. On offense, the O-line broke down a few times, and there was some pressure getting to the quarterbacks. But in general, I mean, that's what this offensive line is, right? What's interesting that we did talk about, Minnesota doesn't sack the quarterback. They never do. I don't know how many TFLs they had today, how many hurries they had. I'll have to look at that later. But this was a weaker defensive line that Nebraska was facing. So the offensive line was going to look better, and they did look better. They also had Brock Bando back, who's been out since Rutgers, so that helped a ton. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough when you're when your offensive line and your defensive line just aren't strong enough to win week in and week out. But they did show up today. I will say that. It did look like we were the tougher, more physical game for at least the first half. The second half, their offense just wore into us. And the backup quarterback was willing to take risks and take shots that Tanner Morgan just wasn't willing to. It's funny, they said Tanner Morgan has some injury, he won't be back in. I did not think he was injured. What I think happened is they said, you're a game manager. You're not the right quarterback to win a football game. You're the right quarterback to hand the ball off to Mo Ibrahim. But right now, we need a guy who can push it downfield. And they switched over to, his name, Ethan something. And it worked. Shelby says, thank you for the $2. Wisconsin is 3 games back on Illinois and beat Wisconsin. Beat Minnesota? Beat who? I'm not sure what you're saying. Thank you for the $2, though. How reasonable is a Big Ten championship next year? Hopeful. Well, thank you for the $2. How reasonable is it? A lot of people talk about if Mickey Joseph got a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal, he could go to the portal and he could rebuild this team quickly and they could win right away. It's not true. And the reason that we need a coach who can get 3 or 4 years is because they have to rebuild the line of scrimmage. The defensive line will have an opportunity to be rebuilt with JUCO and with the portal. No question. For whoever this head coach is next year. I'm not saying Mickey Joseph. I'm just I'm giving you the argument that some people make about Mickey on the short timeline. Okay. The reality is we're going to see what? 6 or 7, maybe 8 if we're lucky, Power 5 starting offensive linemen in the portal this year. Let's say it's 8. Nebraska with a new head coach has to land at least one of those 8. Then they've got to land at least 1 or 2 JUCO guys to rebuild the line, right? And we're talking about if they're going to the Big Ten championship. Everything else can be rebuilt in the portal, and they can have fast turnaround, quick success. But I don't believe you can rebuild the line that fast. And because of that, I think Nebraska at best is a 7-win team next year, even if everything went in our favor. Even if you got Lane Kiffin, right? Get a superstar head coach who knows how to win games. No matter what, he's going to have to rebuild the offensive line. And that, in my opinion, will take time. That's going to take at least 2-3 years. Big Ten championship is going to take a little bit more time. It just is what it is. 7 wins is my projection for next year in a perfect world. But realistically, the head coach's goal is just going to be to get to a bowl game next year. So. Chuba isn't great, and Trey couldn't hold on to the ball. Purdy's super floaty passes were hanging wide receivers out to dry. They were. It's tough, though. What's the expectation, chat? Tell me the expectation of Chuba Purdy. Do you expect him to come in and be able to throw it 20 times a game and win? I'm honestly just asking a question. I want to know what you guys think. Because it's really hard for me to say, okay, Mark Whipple, come to Nebraska. We're giving you an entire new set of receivers who haven't been here before. We're also giving you 2 new quarterbacks who haven't been here before. And on top of that, we're not going to give you an offensive line. Figure it out. Here's the thing. Whipple's got to spend so much time with Casey and these new receivers. How much time does he actually give Chuba? From what it looks like to me, he doesn't give Chuba any time because Chuba's not ready to go yet. Just he looks like a third string quarterback at almost any other school. I'm trying to think who played their third stringer. Kansas State. So Kansas State had to play against TCU 3 weeks ago-ish. Will Howard came in for Adrian Martinez when he was hurt. And then the third string quarterback came in behind Will Howard. I'm guessing that third string quarterback was not a top 300 player. I'm guessing that third string quarterback was a 3-star recruit, nowhere near as highly recruited as Chuba Purdy. But he and Chuba Purdy, honestly, give their teams the same chance to win and be productive on offense. Why is that? It's because Whipple wasn't able to give Purdy the time he needed to get him in shape and ready to go to win games. It's the situation at hand that we're dealing with. And I don't want to knock Purdy too much and say, oh well, he's just a shitty quarterback, and oh we should put in Harburg or we should put in Torres. What are we talking about? If this guy's this far behind, how far behind do you think they are? They're long gone. There's no way they could show up and put pads on and even complete a pass today. It's just not going to happen. But I don't want to get too deep into the right word, because you guys aren't haters, but the pessimistic attitude towards Chubba Purdy or Logan Smothers and saying they're not very good quarterbacks. It's just, it is what it is. I think that they're at a disadvantage with this new coaching staff and the circumstance. Mr. Boss says Palmer is undeniably good, but he is a big play type guy. He's being forced to fill multiple roles because the other receivers are all taking in or lacking. Sorry, I can't read from this far. Lacking in explosiveness and can't get open consistently. Yeah, he's the number one threat, but you saw a guy today in Marcus Washington who had multiple catches. Let me see here. Marcus Washington had 2 catches for 63 yards. That one long one went for 32. And I think he was targeted a couple more times than that and just wasn't able to pull him down. But Trey Palmer's not the only good wide receiver out there. Marcus Washington's been good. He gets open. He runs good routes. He's quick. He's fast enough. He hasn't been as consistent as Trey Palmer is at catching. He drops some, but he's still got help. The other receivers were non-existent today. But what are you going to expect? They weren't trying to throw it and push it. They were trying to run it as much as they possibly could. Getting the chat, guys. Sorry. Gloom says, all of the offseason, the media made Chubba out to have a big arm. From what we've seen, he can barely throw a 30-yard ball, leaves Smothers as a number 2. For now, I would have to say Smothers is the one who deserves the job. Nebraska, when they don't have Casey Thompson, needs to focus on running the football. There's no question about it. They've got big play receivers. They've got a coach who likes to draw up plays that gets those receivers open, but he doesn't have a quarterback who can deliver it consistently. And if you don't have a quarterback who can deliver it consistently, let's run it. It'll prevent turnovers, and it'll give Nebraska a better chance to win. I think we get Casey Thompson back next week, but in the event that we don't, you got to go with Logan Smothers. Right when we saw him warming up on the sidelines today, I just felt like my entire DMs at least, were so happy and so overjoyed because for the entire third quarter, put Logan in, put Logan in, put Logan in, put Logan in, put Logan in. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what to tell you. I think Whipple thinks that he needs to give Chubba the opportunity because Whipple wants to throw it so bad. And he knows the way they're going to win this game is by throwing it. They couldn't run it against Minnesota. Minnesota eventually caught on, and we saw that. That's why eventually Nebraska wasn't able to pick up anything on those runs. They were dominated at the line of scrimmage. The linebackers were blitzing, and they read it. They snuffed it out every single time. Even the quarterback run was stopped. Jared says, I mean, that is the quarterback's job. If he can't do his job, he should be on the bench. Simple. And I'm guessing, Jared, you're one of the people who was asking for Logan Smothers. Let me know in the chat. I want to know. Because I'm assuming that you, like others, wanted Logan when Chubba couldn't get it done. Logan did throw one good pass down that sideline. It was clutch. But outside of that, Logan can't throw it that well either. He's lacking in the arm department. Justin says, I expect my QB to have the confidence and mindset to not be nervous every play. It's interesting. I wonder how much the offensive line, letting guys through and not picking up the blitz, is making him jumpy. We saw, when was it? Beginning of the fourth quarter or end of the third quarter, one of the corners or outside linebackers came up to the line like he was going to run a blitz. Oh, you know what it was? It was coming out of the third quarter right after a TV timeout. And Chubba had a delay of game penalty because he saw that there was a guy who was coming on a blitz. And I don't know if he wanted to call an audible, make an adjustment, get somebody to pick him up, but he didn't get the ball off. And Nebraska had a delay of game coming out to start the fourth quarter, which ultimately killed that drive. That was punishing. It's tough because he's so nervous sitting back there. And I don't think he's been in this situation where he doesn't have as much help. So that probably plays into it. Either way, we don't have a quarterback like we had last year who can make magic, who was explosive enough to find the holes. Chuba was able to do it early on in this game, but that's because he didn't have a spy. There was no linebacker reading Chuba and trying to make sure that he didn't run. So Chuba had a couple runs where he broke through early on. But outside of those, it just couldn't get it going. Ron says the fact that Whipple kept Chuba in as long as he did without changing it up to Logan makes me question his judgment. Yeah. Why did he allow Chuba to go 6 of 16 without giving Logan a chance? And why are they so committed to throwing the ball when they know it's not working? Chuba almost had a couple picks. I think Logan did too. But regardless, at some point, you would hope they would start to run the option. We know Mark Whipple's got zone reads in this playbook, so why not just run that over and over? And then maybe you have a zone read that turns to a little dump pass when the entire defense starts rushing you, because that's what was ultimately happening. When Smothers came in, the defense rushed 6, 7 guys. They knew. I don't know. I don't have answers. It is frustrating, though, knowing that Mark Whipple does have such a big playbook and so many opportunities to switch things up, but he doesn't want to. Husker Nation, thank you for the $10 super chat. This game reminded me of all last season, losing by 1 score. Good content, Connor, but I'm looking forward now to who we get in the transfer portal and the new coaching staff. And look, guys, I'm still going to talk about this team this year, right? I'm going to, this week, have College Football with Sam come on to talk about this Michigan game coming up. I'm going to do a Michigan game preview. I'm also going to do a video where I tell you where I think these coaches, every single one who's on this staff currently, would be coaching if they weren't at Nebraska. So we'll be doing some different types of content because I know you guys are getting not bored of this season, but it's a long season when the games look like this. At least it was competitive to the end, but I understand why you guys are frustrated. So we'll have some different types of content coming this week for sure. And there's a lot to talk about, so that's the good news. Husker Nation, you fired your super chat twice, so I'm not going to read it again, but thank you for the $20. Grow the Farm Up says, who thinks we have more wins if we didn't fire Frost? That's an interesting one. I would honestly say Nebraska might have an additional win, but he'd also cost you some energy, right? So who knows if the defense would have been playing well. Shenander would still be here. So I don't know that that's entirely true. From an offensive perspective, I do think Scott Frost would have been able to work better with Smothers and with Purdy when Mark Whipple's not able to. But outside of that, he had a lot of baggage and he was holding this team back from accomplishing much of anything. So I don't want to get too deep into that. But he wasn't the right head coach, and I think it would have really hurt this team down this stretch. No way he would have beaten Rutgers. No way. And I don't think he would have beaten Indiana because he would have still had Eric Shenander. So that's my thought. My thought on that. Grass says, how many Husker fans show up in Ann Arbor? 50, maybe 80 fans. My cousin's going to that game. He works for Rivals, I told you guys. So he'll be on the field at that one taking pictures, I think. But I don't think there's going to be many fans traveling for games this year because it's, it's tough to travel to watch your team lose. It's tough. I just hope Nebraska can keep it close in their last game at home against Wisconsin. Maybe beat Iowa. Those are 2 games where Nebraska can win. I mean, Nebraska could have won today. They can win any of these. So we'll have to see. It's really tough. There's a lot of good football on today. So that's the one good part, right? There's a lot of other games that we can watch. Georgia, Tennessee's on. I'm going to get out of here and watch that. We've got another few videos coming up this week though. So there's still stuff to talk about. There's still 3 weeks left of this season. And then we get into the fun part, which is whatever it's going to be, November 29th, so 24 days from now, when we know where the future's going and we've got an idea of what to look forward to, because this is just real tough. LSU says, I'll be honest, I don't think we can beat Michigan. Yes, sir, I don't think we can either. Hardy Del Carmen says, what's your favorite watch site for Nebraska games in LA? I've only watched games in LA at my house. I went to Barney's one day in West Hollywood to watch it with another Corn Crazed subscriber like last year. But outside of that, I just watched the games at my house. Justin Rogue says, the line play definitely doesn't help his nerves. But according to what was said in the press conference, he's nervous in practice also. Hope he can learn to shake it off and show his talent. Yeah, I don't know why he's so nervous. Maybe his injuries are holding him back. Maybe he doesn't know what the play calls are. Maybe he's not. I don't know. It just sounds weird to me that Chubba's not ready to go. He started in games at Florida State last year. He looked great in the spring game this year. And supposedly, don't forget, Chubba was competing with Casey Thompson for the starting quarterback spot this year. Imagine that. Very confusing. I'm not sure how that happened. Cambridge says, do you think we'll see a championship in our lifetime, or is it not possible with the growth of other programs? Man, a Big Ten championship is entirely possible in our lifetimes. I don't know how old you are. I'm 29. I'm going to live another 50 years. So if I live 50 more years, I 100% think a Big Ten championship is doable. It's going to take the right head coach. It's going to take some money. But hopefully I get rich in the next 50 years, and my NIL fund brings the best offensive line in the country to Nebraska. Wise Pine says Whipple won't want to call triple option scheme with Logan, but that's what we need. That's a fact. Yeah, I talked about that a minute ago. Nebraska has to resort to what they were good at last year, which is QB run. It works. When you don't have a good O-line, that's how you make an adjustment. You say, okay, well, our offensive line doesn't work, so we're going to give them two running backs to mess with. We've got Logan Smothers and Anthony Grant. Pick which one, take one out, because the other one's getting free. And then when you stop that, we're going to fake the zone read, and we're going to dump it right over the top for 15 yards to Travis Vokalek, who's going to run for another 20. Look, all I do is play Madden, so I'm not calling real football plays. But if I'm Mark Whipple and I was playing him in Madden, I would work the shit out of that guy. Okay? If I'm playing Mark Whipple, he's got no shot because I know what he's doing on offense. Just saying. Mark Whipple, if you want to play Madden, I got you. Wow. Nate says allegedly. Allegedly, probably what you said. This is you alleging this. PJ to Mickey in that long embrace at the end of the game, which was interesting. You know, PJ Fleck has made a lot of comments about Nebraska looking the part, being bigger than every other team in the Big Ten West, looking like the most physical team in the Big Ten West, but then being one of the most beatable teams, or the most beatable team for PJ Fleck in the Big Ten West. And he didn't like Scott Frost, and Scott Frost did not like PJ. Then PJ with Mickey hugging him at the end for a long time. You guys saw it on the end of the game too. It was interesting to see them have that embrace after we knew there was a little bit of a rivalry with PJ and Nebraska, or more specifically Scott Frost. But it would be interesting to know what PJ said to Mickey. I would not be surprised if it was, you're going to be a hell of a head coach. I wouldn't, because PJ's a good dude. A lot of people hate on PJ, and I understand why. It's frustrating to lose to that freaking guy over and over and over, especially when all he does is row the damn boat. He has slowed up on that, though. I haven't seen him get as hypey as of late. He just goes out there and tries to win games, which is good. But yeah, he embraced Adrian at the end of the Minnesota game last year, hugged him for about 15 minutes, and that I know pissed Scott Frost off. But it is interesting to see. I wonder what PJ's relationship is with Nebraska. Not that he would ever be the coach here, but it is interesting. All right, guys. Well, I don't see anything else that is positive. It's just, I understand your guys' comments in the chat. It's hard to make much of this situation because it just doesn't feel like a very positive one. If we get Casey back, I'm really optimistic for the rest of the season. I think this team's going to still fight for Mickey Joseph. I think Mark Whipple can do a lot more with a quarterback who can throw it downfield. And I think this team will get energized again. I don't think they're going to quit. So that's the one positive note. There's a lot more to come. We're 3 weeks away from any real news about this program. And I will be making plenty of content this week to keep you guys engaged with everything Husker football. So until next time, thank you for being here. I'm going to get out of here and go watch the rest of the games for today because I enjoy my college football Saturdays. So anyway, with all of that said, I will see you in the next one. Go Big Red.